the SSPA, the Lee District SSPA Task Force. I'm Ed Joseph, the chair. And as is usual, I have to go through a script to get us started. And so let me begin. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by the Freedom of Information Act and the emergency ordinance, the Lee District SSPA Task Force needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. First, because each member of the task force is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each task force member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. And of course, it's fine to say you're at home. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you hear each of your colleagues. Following the roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. All right. Beginning with the roll call, Robert Livingstone.
Robert Livingstone, at home.
Thank you, Robert. Carol Allen. Carol, I can see you.
Carol Allen at home.
Thank you. Rand Pixa. Didn't see Rand's name. Rand, are you out there? Moving on, or is alternate Andy Bernick? Andy? Moving on, Pamela Pineros? Don't remember seeing Pamela's name, or her alternate Leslie Hatch. Leslie? Moving on, Leah Lambus Skidmore.
Leah Lambus Skidmore from home.
Leah, we could barely hear you, I'm afraid.
Does this sound better?
Much better, yes, thank you. Larry Dempsey. Didn't see Larry's name. Larry, are you out there? Jane Kelly.
Jane Kelly at home.
Thank you, Jane. Jeff Safel.
Yes, Jeff and Sona Safel at home.
Hi, Sona. Thank you both. Tom Rickard.
Tom Rickard from home.
Thank you. Cindy Potter. Don't think Cindy was going to be able to join us, but Cindy, no, I don't hear you. I don't hear Cindy. Let's move on. Jim Drinkard. Jim? No. Moving on. Rosemary Clay. Rosemary, are you with us? Liz Murphy, your alternate.
Liz Murphy, home.
Hi, Liz. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Holly Doherty.
Holly Doherty at home.
Thanks, Holly. Don Tennant. Don, are you with us? Moving on, Carl Sell. Carl? I know Carl's with us.
I'm checking the names now. It looks like we may have lost Carl. I don't see his name in the list anymore.
He was I think he was having bandwidth problems from something I saw on the screen.
Yeah, I saw that little yellow triangle also.
Okay. Moving
I'll
on.
keep an eye out for.
Okay. Marta Morrissey.
Morrissey at home from Springfield.
Thank you, Marta. Steve Levinson.
Carl looks like he's back, but he's muted.
You can see the light shining off of Carl's head.
Yes.
Carl, are you with us?
Carl Stell at home.
Thank you, Carl. Back to Steve Levinson.
All right, Steve Levinson in beautiful downtown Springfield at home.
Beautiful downtown Springfield. Thank you, Steve. Tom Sachs.
Tom Sachs at home.
Thank you. Jim McCracken. Jim, are you with us? Alternate Juliana Sharp. Juliana, I believe you're with us.
I apologize, the space bar didn't work. Juliana Sharp at home.
Thank you. And also alternate Rachel Dexter. Rachel, are you with us? Moving on, John Tomko. John Tomko. Thought I saw John. Thought I saw John's name.
I checked his name
John
off on my list earlier too, but I don't see him anymore.
Okay, Richard Dresner. Richard Dresner, are you with us? John Gannon.
John again at home.
Thank you, Jonna. Is there anyone else who didn't answer up or who didn't hear their name who's a voting member of the task force? Okay, I count 15 members, including myself, so that we do have a quorum. All right. At this point, I'll pass the virtual gavel to our Vice Chair, Tom Sachs, so that I may be heard to make some necessary motions.
And isn't there a whole spiel you have to read before you turn it over?
I did.
Okay. Are there any motions from the floor?
Yes. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Lee District Task Force, SSPA Task Force.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. Any other motions?
Thank you. I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the task force to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, the Freedom of Information Act's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the task force and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the task force may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by registering through the meeting link on the Track a Plan Amendment page of the SSPA website, or by calling 844-621-3956 and entering access code 2330-051-6512. It is so moved.
I second.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you. Last, I move that this meeting must be conducted online during the current emergency in order to discharge the lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities of the Lee District SSPA Task Force.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Tom. So I will take the virtual gavel back. So members were provided with a draft of minutes from our meeting of March 28th. Actually, I sent out two versions, the second one containing an edit, which I neglected to make in the first version. I would ask that the second version be considered for approval. Many thanks to Holly Doherty for drafting the minutes. Unless there are any suggested changes, I will now entertain a motion to approve them.
This is
I
Jonna.
move to
To
approve.
approve.
So that was, I'm sorry, who was moving to approve?
Jonna did, but I think there was somebody else in there too.
That's Leah.
Yeah, let Leah, because
Okay.
she was at the meeting. I just realized I wasn't at the meeting, so let Leah.
Well, okay. Well, Leah moves to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and I should note that John Tomko noted the misspelling of his name, which I have corrected in my copy. All right, okay, we have a motion for approval and we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, the second version that was sent out,
Aye.
please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say no. You're none. Any abstentions? You're none. Okay, minutes are approved. All right, thank you. So tonight we will consider the draft plan text for the Van Dorn TSA prepared for us by staff based on our previous discussions. Staff will present the draft and then we will move to a period of questions and comments from members of the public. Following that, the task force will discuss the draft. We can accept it as it is or edit it to better fit the recommendation we want to make to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. In the end, we will vote on exactly what our recommendation will be. If we can finalize our recommendation tonight, that would conclude the business of the task force. At the end of our meeting tonight, we will then hear from staff regarding the next steps in the SSPA process and the ongoing consideration of changes in that process for future SSPA cycles. So with that, I will turn things over to, I believe it's David Stinson of staff. Thank you, David. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Ed. I'm going to bring up my presentation. All right, can everyone see my screen?
We can see it. Though there's, at least on my screen, there are some gray boxes. There's a gray box blocking a portion of the screen.
There's a gray
I have it
box.
too.
Yep.
Do you have it now?
It just disappeared. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. Well, I'm David Stenson with Department of Planning and Development, and in attendance this evening from the Department of Planning and Development are Clara Johnson, Mike Linsky, Steve Waller, and Corrine Bebeck. Additionally, Tom Burke and Arpita Chatterjee from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation are also in attendance this evening. At this evening's task force meeting, we are going, as Ed said, we're going to discuss the draft plan text for the Van Dorn Transit Station area, which was
David, I'm sorry
This
to
is Jonna.
interrupt.
Can we get rid of those two boxes? The one that says always use subtitles and alt texts?
Is that what you're seeing? I'm sorry.
No, that we had seen the other gray boxes before, but sorry.
Let me try.
Yeah, just go ahead and run the presentation, I think is.
Just one moment. I'm sorry about that. Let me just.
That's okay. It was cutting off part of the slide. Thanks, David.
I apologize for that. It's actually, okay, can everyone see it now?
Yes, it's not you're not running the presentation, but we can see the full slide.
Okay. We see it. We see your screen that, well, before it just disappeared, it said agenda.
Try this again.
Perfect.
Okay, I apologize for that. Anyway, at this evening's task force meeting, we're going to discuss the draft plan text for the Van Dorn Transit Station area, which was distributed to the task force last Friday. We will also provide the opportunity to the public for questions and comments, followed by a task force discussion and a vote from the task force on their recommendations. Additionally, we will also provide an update of the time frame for the next steps and schedule for this plan amendment, and close with an update on the site-specific plan amendment retrospective. So as stated previously, the objective of this evening's meeting is to review the draft plan text and get a recommendation and vote on the draft plan text from the task force. The draft plan text for the Van Dorn Transit Station Area Plan Amendment recommends adding an additional option to the recommendations for land unit D for up to 375 multifamily dwelling units or stacked townhomes and a maximum of 65,000 square feet of office or neighborhood serving commercial uses, with conditions to address concerns and issues discussed at previous task force meetings. This proposed option will not change the base plan or remove the existing option for land unit D in the comprehensive plan. The draft plan text recommends 4 conditions to address issues and concerns discussed at the last task force meetings. The first conditions we will review is transitions. At the last few meetings, many of you stated that any new plan text should include language recommending transitions to the adjacent residential neighborhoods to the south and east. Currently, the comprehensive plan contains countywide policy recommending compatible transitions between adjoining land uses. Additionally, the draft plan text before you includes a condition that strengthens the requirements for any transitions to adjacent residential neighborhoods. The next proposed condition is for pedestrian and bicycle access. At the last task force meetings, we discussed concerns over the lack of pedestrian and bicycle access to the Van Dorn Metro Station. Now, although the adopted comprehensive plan includes area-wide recommendations that pedestrian and bicycle traffic should be safely accommodated to the metro station, the condition before you strengthens the guidance for improved access to the Van Dorn Metro stations, as well as the bus service along South Van Dorn Street. The next condition is for stormwater management. As we have discussed previously, any redevelopment in the Fairfax County is subject to stormwater guidance found in the policy plan. Additionally, the subject property is part of the Cameron Run watershed, which is one of the most degraded watersheds in Fairfax County. As a result, redevelopment in this area is consistently asked to meet higher stormwater standards. Therefore, the draft plan text proposes the conditions to strengthen stormwater management guidance, emphasizing a 25% reduction of runoff for 1, 2, and 10-year stormwater events. The last condition we have to review addresses the Oakwood Road and Vine Street connector. As we discussed at previous meetings, the existing plan text for the Van Dorn Transit Station area recommends a multimodal bridge across the Beltway connecting Oakwood Road to Vine Street and Land Unit B. The transportation analysis concluded that the development proposed by this plan amendment would not require this bridge for transportation purposes. In response to concerns about the feasibility of the implementation of this planned bridge, the draft plan text proposes a condition that any new development will need to demonstrate that it does not preclude the implementation of the planned bridge connecting Oakwood Road to Vine Street. In addition to conditions, the proposed option in the draft plan text includes additional guidance for consolidation. At the last few meetings, we discussed how residential uses are not compatible with industrial uses, and one potential solution for this compatibility issue may be full consolidation. In response, the draft plan text recommends full consolidation of Land Unit D. However, it also includes plan text acknowledging that if full consolidation is unachievable in the parcel at 5605 Oakwood Road, which is a 12.5 acre parcel on the west side of Land Unit D, may redevelop independently of the remaining parcels in Land Unit D. A question I would like to ask the task force to address during the discussion is, do you want to include plan text that allows 5605 Oakwood Road to develop independently of Land Unit D if consolidation is unachievable, as we did not hear a clear consensus about consolidation at the last few meetings? And so before we start the task force discussion, I would like to provide the public the opportunity to ask questions or provide comment, including the nominators. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function by pressing the hand icon at the bottom of your screen. For those calling in by phone, please dial *3 if you'd like to speak. You may also use the chat function to ask questions and provide any comments. So again, I guess now we would like, does anyone from the public have comments?
I
David,
see.
I don't know if you see my raised hand. It's Lynn Strobel. Would this be an appropriate time for me to speak?
Oh, yes, it would be.
I see that Ann Bloss from the public has her hand raised too. So do you want to do public first or nominator first?
Let's let the nominators speak, and then after that we can hear comments from the public if that's okay with Ed.
Oh, is everybody saying Lynn Strobel's? Okay. Had trouble. David, are you seeing some people having trouble?
Yeah, I see like looks like some people have dropped off.
Okay.
Yes, it's showing low bandwidth for Lynn also now.
Maybe if we're hearing from nominators, I don't know if Lori is on and if she has a comment to make at this time.
She has her hand raised.
Okay.
I think I have the bandwidth. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Well, thanks, and thanks for the opportunity to comment. Don't have a lot to say. We are in agreement with staff's language as it applies to the Kettler property. Oh, sorry, Lynn.
No, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I cut out and I couldn't get back in. Please go ahead, Lori. I'm sorry.
I'll be very brief. Again, in agreement with the language as it applies to Kettler's property, the 12.5 acres. We think that the language acknowledges the benefits of the lower density proposed, which are, a lower trip generation, and just point out it's a lower trip generation than even half of the current comprehensive plan language option. But it still includes important development conditions or conditions that are important to this area, like the stormwater management controls, the transitions, and the not precluding the planned bridge across the Beltway. That is all still in there. I would obviously encourage the task force to adopt this language as it applies to the consolidation in terms of the Kettler property. The Kettler property is the largest amount of land, the 12.5 acres owned by a single ownership. And it is also, in the most western portion of this land bay. And in looking at the map, the farthest away from any of the industrial uses. So again, we support the language. I'll, hold on. Charlie Keeler from Kettler is also here, and we're available for any questions later on. Thank you.
Do you want me to go ahead, David?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I
That's
didn't
okay.
realize. Lynn, thank you, Laurie. Lynn, do you want to add anything?
I would, and I'd like to share my screen. I just have one slide that I'd like to kind of share with the group. Is that possible?
Go ahead. Sure.
It's not enabled. Steve, can you? The button at the bottom that says share is not available. Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, it's up on my screen.
Here we go.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
There it is.
Okay, so what I have done, I just have a couple of suggested modifications to the proposed plan text, and I just had my assistant type what was presented by staff, and I tracked just some they may appear like minor changes, but I think it's really important to this process. And not surprisingly, because I represent a number of property owners with different parcels, we find that the language requiring full consolidation is problematic. We would suggest logical parcel consolidation. The requirement of full consolidation will preclude, honestly, reasonable development in this area that would result in less traffic impacts. And with full consolidation, existing conditions will remain, which is really a patchwork of different zoning districts and different uses. And, I hate to say, but this plan amendment will have been for nothing. We will not accomplish anything through this plan amendment, which I think was targeted to looking at a more cohesive way to develop this area if a full consolidation is required. Logical consolidation, I believe, will achieve the objectives of the staff. The conditions that are drafted can be evaluated going through a rezoning process. And if a proposal is in compliance with these conditions, then it should have an opportunity to go through that rezoning cycle. So Lori and I often agree on things, but in this one we disagree because I don't think that, it's fair that parcel 12A would be treated differently than the balance of the property on Oakwood Road. That, if the concern is with industrial traffic, creating an incompatibility, leaving the balance of the property as non-residential and industrial uses, will not address that concern. I also want to point out that there's it's a different suggestion for the stormwater management. We had our civil engineer take a look at the language. He felt that the words minimize impervious surfaces was vague. He also thought that minimum standards could mean different things. And so he proposed this language, which does provide for controls that are above and beyond current regulations, but we feel that it's specific enough to avoid confusion at the time of the rezoning. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I did submit a letter, which I believe that Mr. Joseph distributed, that kind of reiterates some of the things I've said this evening, which is really asking for consideration of logical parcel consolidation rather than full. So I'll thank you and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Lynn.
I'll try to.
All right. We have Ann Bloss with her hand up. Ann?
Hi. I actually have a number of comments. I don't know if it would be useful to share my screen, or I don't know if there's a way to send an attachment over chat to make it more readable. But in general, I'll say that I think there need to be updates to other parts of the text on the Van Dorn Transit Station area with regard to two topics: residential development in Land Unit E and interchange upgrades at South Van Dorn Street, I-485. So my first question is that package that I saw was about the whole Van Dorn Transit Station area. And I noticed that there were a couple of places where it talked about an improved South Van Dorn Street I-495 interchange design. And I wonder, is there some potential future interchange design that's out there, or is this talking about the something that has already occurred in the past?
Right now on the comprehensive plan map, there is a conceptual idea to upgrade the Van Dorn Beltway interchange. But at this point, there is no design yet or funding for this project. And I don't know if Tom Burke is here, if he wants to, from DOT, if he wants to elaborate on that or not.
Tom, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, there is a long-range improvement in the comp plan to improve the interchange, but that improvement is not yet known. It may, the upcoming VDOT study, the South Side Express Lane study, may lend some information into that process, but we just don't know yet. At this point in time, there is no design or concept, but it will remain on the plan as a need.
Okay, in that case, I don't have any comments on that. I was confused and felt like I needed to get a bigger context. In that case, my only comments are about how this broader text of the Van Dorn Transit Station area discuss residential development in Land Unit E. It gives inconsistent descriptions, and in some places it still describes the potential for residential development without acknowledging that development has already occurred, specifically my neighborhood, Gunnell. The reason I believe the task force has cause to look at the broader text beyond the portion that the staff drafted is that the broader text provides context that is needed in order to evaluate the nominations. In particular, the staff's proposed text refers to adjacent residential neighborhoods. So I have 6 suggested wording changes in the broader text. I don't know if the easiest way for this would be for me to share my screen.
Maybe, David, I think when we did this last time, you had a screen with active text going on, so we could look at the proposed language and add or subtract, make changes.
I can bring up.
Can you?
Yeah, I can bring up the draft plan text.
And while you're bringing that up, David, I want, I think it's worth reviewing. We do have a limited scope of what portion of the text we can change. The remedy for that, of course, is for Supervisor Lusk to modify the authorization if he wants to make those changes. That would be the remedy. So that
I understand that. I'm trying to keep this within the scope, but I'm happy if you say that, okay, that's beyond the scope. I just wanted to chance to bring this up because I think it applies in the sense that it's context for the draft that staff came up with.
So we should take a look.
So the first observation is on page 1, the second paragraph.
Excuse me, Steve, can you make me the presenter, please? Thank you, Steve.
Yes, I did it.
Okay, I think can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I see it. Okay, so
yes, we
can
see your screen.
I'm sorry. So that second paragraph, I would propose you change the first sentence to say, the transit station area contains residential uses and a variety of predominantly industrial uses.
Sorry, this was the second paragraph. Okay.
we're on, which page are we on?
Page 1.
Okay, that's.
And the second paragraph is on the screen now.
Well, as Clara pointed out, I think that's beyond our scope, right?
That's correct, Ed.
Do we have an ability to change language in that part of the plan?
We were not.
Propose changes?
Well, not under the current scope. And my other observation is probably this text needs an update anyway. And so I don't think that we would recommend that the supervisor, I mean, I think if he was interested in updating this context, I think we would recommend a review of all of it. The other thing I would say is that it doesn't, it won't, well, so I think that the comment, if I'm understanding it, is to update the description of the current uses. Is that the intent?
Yeah, that's my intent.
Yeah. And I can see that. Go ahead.
I think that it does apply, but again, I also understand that there is a scope here. So
yeah. So I think, I mean, I think we can recognize that probably you would find it in a number of places in the comprehensive plan that the description of the development is dated and may not be up to date. And when we get the chance, we try to update those, but it won't. The good news, if there is any, is that it won't affect the review of a development proposal.
I wonder if I could just run through my remaining 5 comments to see whether you have, I don't mean to, burden the time, but just since I've noticed this on page 4, the 3rd bullet that's listed. The second sentence, it talks about transition to the residential development to the south. Could you also add and east? And this one might be closer to the scope because it is talking about a design concept.
Where's this?
Page 4, 3rd bullet, 2nd sentence.
And what I'll do is I'll go back to staff. What's interesting is that we had also identified this actually. And we had posed the question to our senior staff, like, can we, development has happened, can we say this? And I think the response we got was it's outside of the scope. But I think what we can do is just ask again. I mean, I don't think we're opposed to the idea.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I'll go ahead and talk about page 7, the 4th bullet. Again, I would add the words and east. Screening and buffering to protect nearby residential areas to the south and east. And then if you're ready to move on, I'll mention, I have 3 comments regarding page 8 that talks about land unit E. Change in the first paragraph, I would recommend changing the first sentence to read, most of land unit E is planned for and developed with single family houses, and continuing on. And then the second paragraph, I'm not sure if that paragraph is necessary anymore. I don't understand planning. So if there's stuff in there that needs to be in there, then I don't understand that, but perhaps that in your future review, perhaps remove that. But one part that I am a little concerned, my last comment, is the 3rd paragraph. I I think the third paragraph could be misunderstood by saying there's a connection between Oakwood and Bush Hill Drive. The reason why I think that is that the very first time I saw this, before I got involved in the land use committee, I read this, I was so baffled. Now I know it's probably just something that needs to be updated and that it's talking about separate things. But perhaps this might be something to consider now, because it does kind of create this confusing impression that you could have some sort of a connection between Oakwood Road and Bush Hill Drive. My thoughts would be just to delete sentences 5 through 7. And those are my comments about the part that is not what staff updated. I have 3 thoughts on the part that staff updated, if you're ready to move on.
Yes, please.
I don't know whether this applies, so tell me if it is not appropriate. In your first bullet, ensure compatible transitions, you mentioned transitions in height, landscape screening, and appropriate buffers. Is it possible to put distance buffers in there? I'll throw that out as a consideration for the task force to discuss when the task force discusses. So that's one of my 3 comments about the text. Actually, my second comment, I don't even need to mention. I understand that better. And my last comment is the last paragraph of the draft text. Could you change it to read screening between new and existing residential uses and existing commercial? Add the words "and existing." The last sentence.
How can transition be or screening be provided between existing residential units and existing commercial units?
Unless I'm misunderstanding the text, it looks like my neighborhood is not recognized as an existing residential use that we would want to have screening.
Yeah, and this is a good time to explain what the thinking was. I know this. We received questions about different drafts of that sentence. People asking, "What do you mean? Add clarity." This was meant to. This whole paragraph is about the. Okay, I guess I'll start here. If we're not going to recommend full consolidation of this land unit, then it means that we are considering a condition where residential development might be located next to some of the existing industrial or commercial uses. And so we wanted to say that there needed to be screening between any new residential and some of those existing commercial and industrial uses. Because presumably, if all of the land unit were consolidated, we wouldn't be creating or planning for that kind of a condition. And so you're right to observe or to notice that this wasn't about the existing residential. New development would need to do that. That's what the first bullet is about. And this would all apply with new development. There wouldn't be an opportunity to have these conditions apply unless new development is coming in. And so those existing industrial or commercial uses wouldn't be asked to provide any additional screening unless they were trying to implement this option. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. I I don't know if it just needs to be clearer in the text, because consolidation or not, my house is bordered to this property and I'm an existing residential use. So I want to make sure that's recognized. So the sentence talks about existing commercial uses. So I just thought, could we also talk about existing residential uses? Again, if this is like land use speak that I don't fully understand, then I trust you. I just wanted to observe that it's confusing to a lay reader.
Okay. Okay, yep, we'll take that note. I think just so that everybody gets the benefit of understanding what this doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that there would be any additional screening between the existing residential neighborhood and those existing commercial and industrial uses, not coming from this recommendation. If those commercial uses came in for some other action under their current zoning or another plan option, there would be opportunity to seek that compatible transition.
Oh, I'm not, I don't mean to be misunderstood. I don't mean to ask for new screening between existing commercial and existing residential. I'm sorry if that's what it sounded like.
Okay, so maybe this is then what's missing is the new commercial uses and the existing residential is kind of the part that you're asking about. Like if since we're planning for predominantly residential uses, but some commercial uses as well, where does that screening happen? And I think that's what we intended the first bullet to do. That's what's carrying the weight of any screening that's needed for those adjacent residential neighborhoods. And then this other circumstance where we say if full consolidation is unachievable, provided the 4 conditions above are achieved. So we're wanting to kind of loop it back to that, saying you still have to do that. But we also have these new residents that might be next to some of these existing uses. So we're kind of trying to cover that one situation that wasn't covered by that first bullet.
Okay, I think I understand your answer. I'm happy to turn it over to task force to discuss.
Thanks for the questions.
Thank you, Anne. All right, is there anyone else from the public with a question or a comment?
I'm not seeing any more
other hands. Yeah, and I would ask you to click on the hand to take your hand out. Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions or comments from the public, I guess it's time to move to the task force. Questions or comments from the task force? I see Carol Allen has her hand up. Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. I have some concerns about inconsistencies. The document that we received, the Van Dorn Transit Station area is part of the Rose Hill Planning District. And the document we received represents pages 15 through 23 of a 24-page document that deals with the Rose Hill planning. And there are specific references in the document prior to what we received that talk about these particular areas. So we need to make sure that they're consistent. In that area, I had, with respect to, now there is a reference in the document to Land Unit B, which is Vine Street, and it talks about the potential for a redesign of the Van Dorn Beltway interchange, as well as some widening of the beltway that could take the eastern portion of Land Unit B, making Vine Street landlocked, and it emphasizes in that particular section the need for the road connecting Vine, the bridge connecting Vine to Oakwood. So we need to make sure we don't do anything inconsistent with that. With respect to the changes here, I agree with the change that Lynn recommended, changing full consolidation to logical or something other. I don't, at this particular stage, given where we are with the Kettler property and the other parcels, I don't think it makes sense to try to push for full consolidation of all of Land Unit D. There are, and we do, since I won't go over some of it, I had some of the same concerns that Anne had with respect to inconsistencies and seeming to mention or ignore or miss part of what's already been developed. One major concern I have is with the last paragraph where it says, if full consolidation is unachievable, blah, 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 the above conditions. It sounds to me like it's talking about the parcels east of the Kettler property on the south side of Oakwood, and it looks to me like it ignores or leaves out and has no reference to the north side of Oakwood. So I don't know how where that piece gets in. So that was a concern I had. Are we missing part of the component of Land Unit D? And the connectivity, obviously, with Bush Hill was another concern, even though it's not in the text that we're talking about. And it could be something that was part of the original development because there is connectivity to Gunnell Estates through Bush Hill Drive. But we want to make sure that there isn't any additional from what's left of Land Unit E to the residential neighborhoods. So that seems to be a little bit inconsistent with the prohibition of vehicular connection from Oakwood into the residential communities that exist to the south and the east. So those are some of my concerns with what we have. Some of my other concerns would be more for zoning with respect to, some of the things that we talked about before, the traffic and congestion and some of the constraints for development, as long as we have no improvements in some of these other areas. And I have a little bit of concern where it talks about pedestrian and bicycle paths where it's looking like it's looking for significant bicycle and pedestrian access into our community. And something else that would be, I think, would be for a zoning is the extension for residential on Saratoga. Having gone back and looked at that area and the topography. So I guess the key thing is the north side of Oakwood. Is that intended to be included in the consolidation in that last paragraph?
Yes, it does include both sides of Oakwood Road.
Because we really haven't talked about the north side of Oakwood. We've talked primarily about the south side, the Kettler property, and then the ones east of that, not the ones on the other side of Oakwood. And I don't know how you consolidate those. Because that's where most of the industrial business is on the north side.
That's right.
Those property.
Right. And so the way the way it's expressed, it says, it then describes the remainder of Land Unit D. And that was our shorthand for saying It's all the rest of it, everything other than parcel 12. So that would mean both north and south of Oakwood Road. Yeah.
Because I mean, some of those look like they don't have any business on them. They're just chunks of land. And then on the north side, you've got a lot of businesses actually running. Those properties used to all be zoned residential, so most of the businesses are operated out of what are single family homes. But with, you know, landscaping, construction.
I do have a question for the suggestion about using the language of logical parcel consolidation. I think in other circumstances in the plan, that is a phrase that we will use in the comprehensive plan. The intention is usually to get enough of a land area so that you're not leaving parcels out that couldn't develop consistent with the plan. And I think that would be achievable here. But I think what would get missed, and so this is a question for everybody who's suggested language like that. Would the purpose of would the purpose still be to minimize that incompatibility between industrial uses and new residential development? Like, are we still trying to, if we were to talk about logical parcel consolidation, would we then add guidance about trying to address that, whatever consolidation is proposed? Because I think that's the only thing that I see. Well, I guess I'm wondering, you know, is that still a primary concern, or we're just satisfied that could be screened, or yeah, we could add some kind of screening language about like that last sentence in that paragraph. And it's too bad we can't see the rest of that paragraph. Is there a way to, oh. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So that last sentence would be the only indication in this specific option to address that condition. But now we're talking about how that might be any number of configurations.
Well, I guess the question would be, are you planning, if we let 12A go off and develop on its own, are you looking at then the rest of the parcels in land unit D have to be consolidated in order to include residential? And one of those properties is already zoned residential, so they could build by right.
That's right. But to implement this option at this intensity, this number of units, the way this is written, it means that the rest of the land unit would need to consolidate. That's what this means.
But my understanding was with the original application for the residential in the land unit that are represented by Lynn's application, that development included only the south side of Oakwood. It did not include the north side. So are we now saying that we would preclude development on the south side unless it consolidated with the north?
That's what this means. That is what this means. And so if that's not the recommendation that the task force wants to make, we would make changes. I think.
And how would that be? And how would that be impacted if there is both a widening of Van Dorn Street? I mean, not Van Dorn, a widening of the Beltway that could possibly take some of that property, as well as a redesign of the Van Dorn interchange, which could also possibly take some of that property.
Right. Well, the alternative is that those properties might, you know, we have no indication at this point that any of that property will be taken, and that the improvements will need more than the current right-of-way that UDOT has. However, I know we've talked about what if they take some of the property north of Oakwood Road. Well, then I don't know if that means that they just wouldn't have a viable enough land area to do anything possibly, or they might. You know, it's not something we know at this point. But the way this language is written, it means that they don't get left out of a consolidation. You know, and this is really based on, well, I'll say two things. This is really based on the discussion we heard at the last meeting where, you know, we heard a lot of discussion about what is it appropriate to have industrial uses sharing these roads with new residential development. We heard that concern. And then we also heard that maybe the parcel 12A is large enough to move ahead on its own. And so we kind of offered this last paragraph as something that you could keep as a part of your recommendation. You could strike it from your recommendation. And now we're hearing maybe modify it to not say. I mean, I think that's what we're discussing right now. What if not only could 12A proceed independently, but some other consolidation, not the whole remainder of land unit D, but some logical parcel consolidation could also redevelop and avail itself of this option. And so I think I'd be interested in hearing more from people about if that's what you want as your recommendation. I think staff at this point, staff still has a ways to go to finalize our recommendation and publish a staff report. But what I'm getting from our senior staff is, I think we were in the same spot the task force was at the last meeting. It's a hard question. We will definitely take into account whatever the task force recommendation is, but this is something that staff could support, something like this. But you're the task force and you get to make your own recommendation. So
okay, thank you. All right. Carol, do you have anything else or can we move on?
We can move on. It took me a while to get my hand down.
All right. I know Tom Sachs has had his hand up for a while. I see Lynn put her hand up. I assume Lynn wants to respond to something that she heard. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yes, if that would be appropriate. I just wanted to clarify. I think that Carol had asked about who I represented. I do represent owners that are on the south side of Oakwood, but when the nomination was filed, we did file on all of the properties. We were encouraged to do that. I believe it was through the supervisor's office, just so that there could be a larger look at this area. But my clients are on the south side, and I just wanted to clarify what was said, that the language as written would mean that 12A could go forward and develop, but for any of the remaining parcels in D to develop, you would have to do full consolidation on the north and the south sides. And that really would preclude, as I said, reasonable development. I think that would make this whole process we've gone through futile in my opinion, because I don't know that you could get absolutely full consolidation. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I thank you for the time.
Okay. Thanks, Lynn.
And I
Tom
understand.
Sachs.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Carol, do you need to respond or can I call on Tom?
I was gonna just say that I interpreted that last paragraph the same way Lynn did, that if 12A went off by itself, then all of the other pieces have to be consolidated in order for any residential development to take place. And and even though Lynn's application included the north and the south side, the proposal that they had with the application only addressed the south side. So that would constrain them from going forward if they all agreed on a single plan. So I'm.
All right. Thanks, Carol. Tom?
I guess I'm a little concerned that we're putting the cart before the horse. We're letting a developer drive the language that we're putting into an amendment of the comprehensive plan that would allow development. And I guess I'm uncomfortable with that. Would we be putting the same language forward if Kettler wasn't ready to build? From my perspective, full consolidation is a requirement because we don't want to have new people come in and complain about all the industrial uses that are disturbing them every morning and every afternoon, because we've had that happen before. And I think we're on the wrong track here completely because it's being driven by a developer. And from my perspective, Van Dorn can't handle even 100 multifamily dwellings, let alone 375,000 dwellings. And I think we really need to not approve this, or if we do, require the full consolidation, except for the 12A. But I'm really concerned about 12A because it's only covering part of 12A. It's not covering all of 12A. And we're letting one developer drive the process. I'm very, very uncomfortable.
Thanks, Tom. Dan Lagana, Planning Commissioner, has his hand up. Dan?
Hey, Ed, I just wanted to ask a few questions. I mean, and just offer some clarification. When we first discussed this proposal has been, I think, when we first discussed this with the applicant, at that point, it was solely Lynn, Ms. Strobel, and this was probably about 2.5 years ago, in the supervisor's office. We were pretty clear about full consolidation, and we may not think that's practical. You may want to talk about that, but I think that the reason we stressed full consolidation, and I really want to emphasize this too, is we're talking about sort of the lighter effects of putting these uses together of residential and industrial, of people complaining, not to diminish the traffic concerns, but traffic, so forth. What scared me is that there are kids running around outside, and then one of them gets hit by a truck. I mean, I just want to be very clear about it. That's like what is going to happen if you do that. So that's why we had full consolidation, is that that was literally what came out of our mouths when we spoke about this. So the second thing is that I saw the stormwater language. I'd like another look at it, depending on what happens tonight. I will say this though, I do have a question. I'm assuming that some of the comments or the suggested changes that we've heard will be offered as amendments during the motion. How are we handling that from just procedurally? Is it up to
I'm
the,
sorry.
we saw Ms. Strobel had suggested draft language. So is she, is a member of the task force going to be offering that as an amendment, or was this just for our consumption? Why are we looking at that?
Well, I mean, I don't know what motions are going to be made, but that could be, that language could be part of a motion.
Okay. But it would, I guess, sorry to be, I'll shut up in a second. If so Anne had a few points. I don't know if she's gonna, Anne and Carol seem to have a few points. Would they be making, I'm assuming that we'll be taking, it's up to them to make an amendment, but they had stuff written down. I just want to be clear about the process for the members here, so that they would offer, we would make a motion, or the task force, not me, would make a motion, and they would offer changes at that time.
Well, any members free to make a motion to approve the language as it is, or to amend the language in any way they see fit?
Okay.
And then if there's a second, then I suppose we vote on that. That's
all right. That's it.
That's the process. Yeah.
Just a point and then kind of a rhetorical question, so folks know. So anyway, thank you.
Anyone else? Tom Rickard has his hand up. Tom?
Yes, please. Thank you. I've got a question on I call it bullet point 4, where you're talking about demonstrate that development does not preclude the implementation of a planned bridge connecting, So what does demonstrate that the development does not preclude? I mean, where's the demonstration? I think if they would, because if the south side of Oakwood develops before the north side, and the bridge is not even studied, does the onus of doing all that work fall onto the north side? And I look at the map, and the plan language says that the bridge connects D and B, but on the picture, the bridge is in E. So my question is, what does it mean to demonstrate that it does not preclude?
Right. And I will say that that's an excellent question. We didn't want to say exactly what degree of engineering was needed to demonstrate that, but what I would expect, and this would have to be applied during the zoning application, I would expect any development in land unit D to indicate how that bridge could be placed here. Because that line on the transportation plan map, I believe it says as much. David and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just a conceptual location. That's not a designed location. That wasn't a studied location. I'll have to go back and look at, and just, if we need to change that to say D and E.
I believe the original comprehensive plan language talks about D connecting to B.
The plan language, the original plan language under land unit B states adequate access from the arterial road system and metro rail is provided, including contribution toward the design and construction of a new bridge connection to Oakwood to supplement or replace the current connection of Vine and South Van Dorn Street. And that's in the body of the the comprehensive plan.
So some element of some level of design to show that a bridge is, that there's a potential alignment for a bridge, because I see that line on the map and it's clear
for
that's
design
not
and construction. The comprehensive plan says design and construction for development of land unit B, which is Vine Street.
Right.
Okay.
So we need to make sure that whatever gets done in land unit E or D or E doesn't preclude that connection to land unit B.
Right. So we wanted, and we thought it was important enough to specify that in this land unit for this option. That doesn't change, that we wouldn't want to see a development come in without some consideration of where that bridge is going.
I don't see how that demonstrates. I would.
Right. It doesn't.
I'd like to see some money put up for a study.
Because we've been batting this piece around for 2 years now, and we just sort of seem to be kicking it down the road. and
it's
say
good
we're
to get
going to
the people-
preclude it, but it's, the comprehensive plan specifically states that it's necessary for land unit B to be developed. Because we could end up landlocking it.
Well, and if you develop the south side of Oakwood, then is it going to be the onus of the people in 12B to give up land and do a study or do a design?
No, I think it's the first one. The first one in will have to do something to
But
demonstrate.
that's not what the comprehensive plan says. The comprehensive plan specifically talks about land unit B. And one of the conditions for an option of office mixed-use development with uses such as hotel, office, residential, and support retail may be considered if the following conditions are met. And one of them is a contribution toward the design and construction of the bridge.
Right.
That,
And
oh,
so
other case.
There it is, you know,
So this development, isn't what we know, at least what the results of the transportation analysis showed, is that this development doesn't require the bridge. However, the bridge is planned. And it's a part of the planned transportation network. So the first one in land unit G needs to show some level of early preliminary design to show where this bridge could be located so that we know there's room to put the bridge somewhere to connect it.
even if the bridge isn't going to end up on that particular parcel.
If I were reviewing this, that's what I would ask for. Tom, go ahead. I see you're trying to.
So at least we know that there is a spot for it, and then when the rest develops, perhaps it gets moved, and perhaps it needs to be in coordination with land unit B, because if we put a spot in D or E, how does it line up with B? I mean, perhaps there needs to be an element of coordination as well.
Yeah, because I would say we don't know where the bridge is going exactly, and so we need that information.
So the first one in, make sure that there's a spot for it, and then when the rest develops, maybe it gets moved, but at least we knew after the first one's in that there is a spot for it.
Well, D lines up with B better than E. I mean, is the, because on the maps I've seen, it's in E.
And it's, again, that's a conceptual location. And so I can't look at that transportation plan map and say that's exactly where the bridge is going.
If we're
so
talking about D, I was surprised it didn't show up on D.
It says this approximate location. Well, I really give a lot of weight to approximate. Because I know this hasn't been, this is not an engineered design.
Has there been a study? There was money in the CIP for a study. It was all spent.
No, there was money in the CIP for a number of efforts, and the other efforts drained that money, and there was no leftover for this study.
Okay, but now we're planning this place, and it was suggested that a study be done, and we're going to go ahead and plan the whole thing without a study.
Right, because these new land uses, don't generate the need for this bridge or to any. But I think the idea is that the first one in has to evaluate the location of this bridge, has to study it to some degree of engineering.
This is Tom Sachs. Aren't these old issues we'll discuss at zoning and not necessarily part of the plan amendment?
Yeah, well, I think the plan amendment is trying to ensure that it does get addressed at rezoning, that it doesn't get overlooked. That's the point of all these 4 bullet points.
Okay, my only question was, what does it mean to demonstrate that we do not preclude? How are we demonstrating that? Why don't we just say it does not preclude?
Is that the same thing? They'll have to make some engineering assumptions and show the reviewers at the time of the zoning that a bridge could be placed with a connection to Oakwood Road. I think what you just said is pretty much the same thing.
All right. Okay, well, I mean,
Thank you.
That question's been asked a number of times, and I think that's the best answer we're going to get. There's a question from Ann Bloss in the text says, can the diagram show a shaded area that spreads across the length of Oakwood and Vine, annotated that a bridge could be placed within the area?
I think we can take that suggestion. It's a scope issue, because we would only be doing it on the south side. We couldn't do it on Vine Street. Yeah.
Another comment from somebody who agreed with what I was saying.
Going beyond the scope of
Well, that we're letting the developer drive all of this.
So I think I saw Carl Sell with his hand up. Carl? Carl, you have something to say? Sort of. We can hear you, Carl.
Okay, I think what you need to do is put the language about the bridge, put the language of at least part of it that's in
Carl,
D,
you're breaking up, I'm afraid.
Repeat some of it in D. Otherwise, D is not going to be a party to the bridge. Pardon?
You're breaking up. We could hear every other word. We could not hear you clearly, Carl. Could you, maybe if you typed it in the text, I could read it.
I think what
Type
Carl
it in the chat, I mean.
is to take the language from B and add it to D pertaining to the bridge.
Yes.
This would be the time to do that.
And that's a decision for the task force. I think staff would have a concern, excuse me, would have a concern because the transportation analysis didn't show that. Well, substantial.
Yeah,
I think we have to consider that. Yeah.
That's a condition based on the intensity on Vine Street, right? So I mean, you're not comparing apples to apples.
But the bridge goes from B to D.
Yes. But our analysis shows that redevelopment of B, at least intensification of B, would be more the driver for the need for the bridge than what's being proposed with these SSPA nominations. So
yeah, what's problematic is I think we would look for a contribution to the bridge, but substantial, we'd have to think about what substantial means. Because really what we want is the design. That bridge is an expensive piece of infrastructure. And so I think the hard part would be determining how much of a contribution to make for a facility that's planned, but that they don't trigger the need for. That's the tough part. Tom, I don't know if you see it the same way, but that's what I was thinking.
The need for the bridge is to get traffic from Vine Street, out of Vine Street onto Van Dorn via Oakwood. There doesn't seem to be any need to move the traffic from Oakwood over to Vine out to Van Dorn. It's specifically to accommodate the traffic from Vine Street, which is why it's in section B, because the concern in section B is with additional improvements to
That's right.
And the interchange with Van Dorn, Vine Street will become landlocked. They'll lose their access
Yeah.
to Van Dorn. So they need another way to get out, which is through Oakwood.
Yeah, and I don't think, I think the expectation, Tom, and I think we've discussed this, the expectation is that we would ask for some contribution to the to planned transportation improvements, including that bridge. Maybe it's a larger contribution towards studying it. Maybe that's the contribution we would ask for, beyond just demonstrating that they're not precluding the construction of the bridge. Maybe we ask for more than that as their contribution toward the bridge, because I don't know how we, again, for the cost of this bridge, it's not going to, I mean, substantial is the tough word for me, because it's an expensive piece of infrastructure. So that's fine. That's just my observation. If we were to add language like this, maybe we would change it to contribution, just contribution, and towards I thought somebody said earlier, towards the design and construction of the bridge, maybe.
That's on the right track.
Yeah. Tom, I don't know what you think. Would we ask for a contribution? I mean, it would be, compared to the cost of that facility, of that bridge, it might seem really small, but I don't know. And maybe it's too soon to say, because we're in the planning stage, but.
Might be something we need to discuss.
Okay, yeah.
I should note that Carl in the chat said the bridge would take points out that the bridge would take pedestrians from Oakwood to Vine.
Yeah.
So there would be some, to get to the metro, but of course that would only happen if there's a pedestrian connection from Vine to the metro station.
Okay, well,
right.
I think if the task force, yeah, I know there are a number of suggestions, and instead of, it's possible for the task force to offer your suggestions, if you would like to vote on the language and say, amend it in these X, Y, and Z ways, we can do that. And so if you want your recommendation to be, whatever it is about consolidation, we'll write it if you just give us directions to do it. That's, if you want to change.
Ed, can I try again?
You can try again. I think we got your point, but I guess you'd be the judge of that, not me.
On page 6, you talk about a knockout to the metro station from Vine Street. So if you're going to access the metro from Vine Street, you certainly ought to be able to access it from the bridge that goes from Oakwood to Vine onto the access to the metro. That's my point. So it's going to serve both streets.
Yes. My problem with this whole process has always been that since we don't know if that's ever going to happen, how are we supposed to make an appropriate decision? But I don't know. All right. The point's been made. So it is now past 8:30. I'm not hearing much in the way of a consensus here. Who's that speaking?
Tom Sachs.
Tom, go ahead.
I think this is not yet ready for a vote because we still don't have the language. I'm just, Claire's been saying, you give us the language, we'll write it. But how can we vote on it if we don't know what the language is?
Yeah, and that's definitely the choice of the task force. Some task forces do that and are just comfortable saying this is our recommendation and you document your recommendation. But some task forces want to see the language that want to see the recommendation in the form of a fully written out plan text option. So that's all I meant, is that that's an option if you wanted to say.
And
Add language about the design.
yeah, I agree with Tom that we're not ready to vote on it because we aren't quite sure what it should say. Anne had some suggestions. I had some thoughts similar to what she had. I don't know, is there, maybe we could sketch something out and submit it to David or to somebody for suggestions for the next round, or how would we? What
Yeah,
could
I
we
think
do?
I think we would appreciate knowing what the task force's recommendation is about consolidation, first of all. I think we understand what the ideas are, and then if we knew what we were writing for, what the target was for consolidation, then we could work out the text. Because there are
Well, one
three
of the
ideas
things
now
that-
on the table. There's full consolidation, there's parcel 12 can redevelop independently, and then there's not requiring full consolidation, but having language about logical parcel consolidation.
One of the things that makes sense to me, parcel 12 has been coming before the land use committee over the past 40 years in one shape, form, or another, independently of all the rest of land unit D. So I don't know if it makes sense to force it into consolidation with others. And in looking at the properties and going down and driving through Oakwood again and trying to look at them from the residential side as well as the Oakwood side, if we were to me, it looks like three separate segments of, parcel 12A, the south side of Oakwood and the north side of Oakwood, because it looks like there's a potential for the properties on the south side to consolidate and develop as a residential with some commercial retail use. But I'm not sure about the north side, because the north side right now is all, it looks like they're all viable businesses that are operating on a day-to-day basis out of those.
Yes, and those happen to be the industrially zoned parcels.
Correct. So, to me, we looked at consolidating, it looks like, to me, like three logical chunks that way. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but.
I would say that's right. If it's logical parcel consolidation you're looking for, those areas do make sense. But it comes back to this industrial consideration. Are we trying to minimize new residential next to industrial, in which case north and south of Oakwood Road do not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what we'd appreciate knowing, task force.
Well, yeah, so it seems to me we need to come out of this meeting at least with some idea of what we want to do with regard to consolidation, even if
Yeah, this is Tom. I'd like to
we
make
don't
a
come to
motion.
a final recommendation. Go ahead,
I'd like to
Tom.
make a motion.
Go, Tom.
That we require consolidation, as Carol just stated, the north side, the south side, and parcel 12A. That way we give the county direction.
Your motion is to require consolidation of both the north and south sides along with parcel 12A. So that
No, that's three different logical consolidations, not all together.
So so what you're suggesting is consolidation, not a full consolidation of the entire piece, but a consolidation of the north side, a separate a consolidation of 12A, then a consolidation of the north side separately, and then a further separate consolidation of the remaining portions of the south side. Is that what you're
Correct.
suggesting?
Correct.
Yeah, that looks like about 7 parcels or so.
Okay, so, all right. I think we understand the motion. Is there a second? I am not hearing a second.
Rand Pixa, yes, a second.
Okay. All right. Just for the record, Rand, you did not answer up, I believe, at the initial roll call. You've been here on the meeting for
A substantial
most of it since then?
technical difficulty initially.
I see. Okay. I'll mark you as present. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we have a motion and a second. Does anybody wish to discuss this motion before we vote? Anyone have a comment on it? I hear no voices. I'm looking for hands. I see a number of hands, but I don't know if they're new hands. So
Dan Lagana.
if somebody wants to speak to the motion, please speak up. Dan?
Yeah, Ed, I am not a voting member, so this is, but I did have a point of clarification. So what we are voting on is to provide staff with guidance that this is our recommendation, as Tom stated. This goes to why I asked.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, that's helpful then, because that's why I asked the question earlier about I probably wasn't very clear about the amendments and so forth. That this,
right.
I want to be clear about what we're voting on. We're sort of stating this is probably a general statement of this is directional guidance for staff, is what I understand.
Right. So if the way I'm viewing this, and I invite correction from anyone if I don't have this right, is this is not a vote on a final recommendation. This is basically directions to staff to draft new language that we'll come back with at some future meeting yet to be scheduled.
Okay. I'm not stating I disagree with any. I just want to be clear about the procedure, because I'm going to take this, obviously. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Leah, I think that's a new hand up for you.
It is. Can you hear
Go
me?
ahead, Leah. Yes, but please try to speak up.
Okay, let's try it this way. So the initial direction to developers was
You're muffled.
Okay. Do this a little bit better.
Give it a try. I'm not sure.
Okay. Is this any better?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So here's my problem is when the direction was given to do full consolidation, because we needed to be able to have.
You're getting muffled again.
Okay. Well, all I can say is that I actually don't agree with dividing this up.
So you're in disagreement with the motion then?
Yeah, I think that it's not correct to do it this way.
Could you repeat that, please?
I do not think it's correct to do it this way.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Ed?
unless you want to elaborate that on that, Leah. Is there anyone else with something to say on the issue?
Ed?
Yes. Is that Carl? Who's speaking?
So, Ed,
I don't know who was just speaking, but
Ed, can
I know.
can I ask a question?
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Holly.
I just was wondering about, I had a question for Dan Lagana on this, where he said that the supervisor's office, when they authorized the discussion of this area, that they wanted full consolidation. So I'm wondering if we make a recommendation that's different than the original intent, if that's going to go anywhere. And then,
Yeah, hey, Holly, thanks for that.
And then my second, I'll let Dan answer, but it would be really helpful maybe to pull up a map and show specifically what we're talking about on this.
Hey, Ollie, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, and I appreciate the question. Yeah, just the background is that when we met with the applicant, you know, we had, and we agreed to put this into the SSPA review. I mean, we didn't, obviously no one really knew where this was going to go, and this is looking a little bit different now than it did even then. But my recollection is that both myself and Supervisor Lusk articulated that irrespective of what happened, one of the reasons we thought full consolidation was the most optimal choice and was our preference was that because of the mix of uses and that the obvious sort of challenges that came with that, both from, you know, the complaints that Tom had mentioned earlier, as well as the threat to or the danger, if you will, posed to personal safety if kids are playing around and got trucks and so forth driving by. You know, so to say like we definitively said, no, we will never approve something unless it contains full consolidation is would not be a fair statement for me to say, but I would say it was a very strong and pressing point that we made to the applicant. And so like I wouldn't necessarily say that, oh, because everything we do is dead on arrival, but I mean, and I haven't spoken to Rodney about this particular case yet, but I have to say it would, you know, I mean, personally, I mean, I probably need really someone would really need to twist my arm on something other than full consolidation here. You know,
I have a follow-up for Dan.
With you, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. I mean, obviously, I don't like I like letting the land use committee make their recommendation, but that's sort of the point.
I have a follow-up for Dan. In my notes, I wrote down that you said that you and Supervisor Lusk at the beginning met with Lynn Strobel and recommended and talked about full consolidation. But Lynn Strobel doesn't represent all of Land Unit D. So was it consolidation of the portions that she was representing, excluding 12A or including 12A?
I don't recall the discussion about 12A, but I mean, let me just see here. What had happened at the time was I believe Lynn represented, correct me if I'm wrong, a series of property owners that were on one side of the street.
Correct.
And at the time, yeah, correct. And at the time, Clark Construction had owned, had a large portion of Land Unit D. I'm assuming, right? And that was, the discussion was about Clark and Lynn's clients, who I believe were the smaller parcels that you see there on the right. And that was, I believe that was the scope of that particular interaction with us. But then we had mentioned that you got to get the folks across the street on board. I
Okay.
think that's probably what that is like as far as much detail as I can provide based on my physical mental limitations here. But
Okay.
that was the scope of the discussion. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
May I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Lynn. Yeah.
I honestly would have to go back and look at my notes, but I just want to say that this was over 2 years ago when that meeting was held. So it's been a very long time. But a couple of things are absolutely correct in that I only represent the owners on the south side. And I think that, the expectation was, to try for consolidation. I do not remember that as being, there must be. I think what we were told to do was to file the nomination on both sides so it could be looked at on the whole. But Mr. Lagana is absolutely right. It's just that I never have represented those owners on the north side. So I don't think that we would have thought that we were required to consolidate parcels that we had no control over. I can go back and look at notes, but it's been a long time.
Yeah. I was at a meeting, it may be the one that we're talking about. There's a chance it is not the same meeting we're talking about, but I was at a meeting where the first Oakwood Road nomination was discussed, and I know Supervisor Lusk was cared very deeply that we dealt with the rest of Oakwood Road as well, both sides. And I think the second nomination was generated because of his desire for that to happen. And then it all got consolidated into this proposed amendment. That's my memory in any case.
Hey, Ed, can I just add to that quickly?
Sure.
Think too, like, again, this is a hazy memory here. And I look back on my notes and I frankly did not write this. I did not have this meeting or this part of it down. But I don't think if this was just about the two applications and not about full consolidation, we wouldn't probably be dealing with both sides of the road, right? I mean, it just seems like, it just seems to me like the reason is sort of, as you stated, that we're going off of what I said versus what I heard you said here, but the spirit is very much, I think, gives us a really good direction that why would we consider both sides of the road if we didn't anticipate full consolidation or want it on this?
I should interject here that Tom Sachs has indicated to me that he wishes to withdraw his motion. So that motion is off the table. Does anyone have another motion that they wish to make?
Ed, I'd like to make a motion. It's Tom Rickard.
Go ahead, Tom.
On that bullet point that starts with demonstrate, how about we change the following words? They say demonstrate by doing a study or putting some money towards the study on the planned bridge connecting Oakwood and Land Unit D.
Well, I mean, are we,
or make
is
it
your motion?
Just the staff to consider augmenting that language, just like suggesting to staff to maybe breaking these consolidations up into units could help things move forward.
So let me see if I understand you. You're not, tell me if I've got this right or wrong. You're not suggesting that we approve this plan language as written with the one change that you're suggesting? Or are you?
So I'm maybe it's
You
not
found-
enough. I'm suggesting to staff when they rework this that they consider improving the way they're going to demonstrate that it does not preclude.
Well, I think the key issue that we need to grapple with here is what we want to say about consolidation. And then, you know, we can certainly ask the staff to change the, you know, the language with regard to the demonstration language that you're talking about. But that almost seems like a subsidiary point after we have to figure out what we want to do with consolidation one way or another.
There's a bullet item, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets above language that staff added to the plan that says substantial parcel consolidation of the land unit is achieved, especially of the small parcels with terrain variations, blah, blah, blah. Perhaps the language that they add, either we can include this as include the option under using that language, or if we have to incorporate that language as opposed to total consolidation or full consolidation, because I'm not sure the full consolidation makes sense.
I have a question, just a clarifying question. Is that okay?
Yeah, Clara, go ahead.
Would that mean parcel 12 would need to consolidate with another parcel?
Parcel 12 is already consolidated. I mean, it's 12 acres. It didn't, I don't believe it started out in my put my stack of stuff. It's already consolidated.
Got it. I think I understand. It's for the remainder of the land use.
Right. I mean, and we've had a couple of plans. I mean, we've got a plan for it now, and now we've got a proposed new plan if the language gets changed.
I think Leah has a motion she wants to make.
Yeah, I think we need to walk down levels of change here. So I'm asking to move for full consolidation. You know, to drive some decisions.
So full consolidation is essentially the way it's written currently.
Right.
So
I think we need to get a consensus through the panel to find out where we all stand. And if, you know, go full consolidation, if that doesn't make it, then the 3 parcels or major blocks. I don't know. I mean, we're stuck. We need to get unstuck.
All right, so there's a motion to recommend to staff full consolidation as the prime option. Does that capture what you're saying, Leah?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Tom. I'll second.
Okay. Does anyone feel a need for any further discussion before we move to a vote? I'm hearing no voices. Yes, who's speaking?
It's Jane.
Jane, go ahead.
So I think somebody said earlier, if nothing's done, right? Some of these areas, they already have approval to do what they want. And so what happens either way with that?
Staff, I
forgive.
can take a shot at answering that. If only a portion of land unit D moves forward with this option, the remaining pieces can implement, can develop under their current zoning, can, or zoning approval, I should say, or avail themselves of the other option, other plan options in the plan. Or develop with this option at a future time. I mean, I think that, does that answer your question, Jane?
Not really, but I don't know how to further ask any more questions to get it clarified.
So,
This is Tom Sachs. I have a clarification question. Are we saying
Go
that
ahead.
we're going to remove the whole paragraph at the bottom of the page on the screen saying if full consolidation is unachievable? Are we eliminating that paragraph? That's what it sounds like.
Well, I guess the way I noted it as the prime option with the idea that second paragraph starting with if full consolidation is unachievable would be sort of a backup option if obviously full consolidation cannot happen. I assume that's what Leah meant by the motion, but of course it's Leah's motion, so she would need to verify that.
Yes, I was suggesting we drop that paragraph and just do full consolidation as the motion.
That isn't what you said. Basically,
Okay.
what you said was your motion was to retain the full consolidation that was in the first paragraph.
Sorry, Leah, are you saying you want to keep or get rid of that paragraph at the bottom of the page if full consolidation is unachievable?
I'm not sure how to answer that question because now I'm totally confused. So I'm going to withdraw that motion.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I guess maybe the way to approach this is to put aside the specific plan language for the moment and see if we can vote on whether we want full consolidation, and then if it turns out that we do, I guess we can then discuss whether we want a second option if full consolidation is not achievable. Does that
This is
make
Tom
sense?
Sachs. I'll make a motion that we direct staff to remove that paragraph if full consolidation is unachievable. That's a real clear motion and it gives guidance.
Okay, so you.
I'll second Tom's motion.
So Tom's moving to remove the paragraph that starts if full consolidation is not achievable. And that was seconded by who?
Robert Livingstone.
Hill.
Okay, the motion on the table is to, well, Tom, is this to, are you suggesting that should be our final recommendation, or is that just a starting point for further drafting?
I think a starting point, because if someone else wants to add something back about 12A, they could do that. But I don't think we want to leave it kind of open on the consolidation of everything else. I think it needs to be both sides of the street. So,
Okay, because once we remove that language, you know, if that were to be our final recommendation without that language, then there would be, you know, it would require full consolidation with no other option. But okay, if that's your motion, that's what we'll vote on. But you're not, forgive me, I think I'm confusing myself here. So you're
and here's my problem.
Yeah.
The developer is only controlling part of 12A. They're only planning to build on one side of 12A. That leaves the other side of the street kind of flowing in the wind with nobody or nothing going for it. If at least they planned on both sides of 12A, I'd be more comfortable. But right now, let's just move forward and take this out. And if somebody wants to add something about 12A, we can do that. But otherwise, we're going to keep talking for the next 3 months.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is, are we talking about a final recommendation here, or are we talking about just a direction for staff in drawing up new language?
I would say final recommendation.
Okay. And Robert Livingstone, since you were the second, is that your intention as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve the language as written, except to eliminate that last paragraph that begins with "if full consolidation is unachievable." And if this motion is approved, that would be our final recommendation on the Van Dorn TSA. Is everyone clear?
Basically, the motion is to delete the last paragraph and approve what's left.
That's exactly correct. All right. Unless anyone feels the need to further discuss that, we will move to a vote. Actually, before we move to a vote, I need to clarify. I believe I saw Rosemary Clay in on the meeting for pretty much the whole time, even though she did not answer up at the initial roll call. Rosemary, are you still with us? Rosemary Clay, are you with us? I do not hear her, so she will not be called upon to vote. All right.
And this is Jonna, just a clarification. Did we get a second on that motion?
Yeah, from Robert Livingstone, we did.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I also need to clarify, do we have John Tomko? John, are you out there?
I saw a message in the chat from John where he was saying that that he could see everyone, but he couldn't hear anyone. And shortly after 7, he dropped off.
Okay, so I guess he will not be voting. All right. Ready to start the roll call then. Again, just to review, the motion is to that our final recommendation on the Van Dorn TSA be as written, except to remove the final paragraph that begins "if full consolidation is achievable." All right. Robert Livingstone. Please, if you agree with the motion, vote yes. If you disagree with the motion, vote no, and you can always abstain. Robert Livingstone.
Yes.
Robert votes yes. Carol Allen.
No.
Carol votes no. Rand Pixa.
Yes.
Rand votes yes. Leah Lamba Skidmore.
Leah votes yes.
Leah votes yes. Jane Kelly.
Abstain.
Jane abstains. Jeff Seffel.
Jeff Seffel votes no.
Jeff votes no. Tom Rickert.
Tom votes yes.
Tom votes yes. Liz Murphy.
Votes yes.
Liz votes yes. Holly Doherty.
Holly Doherty votes no.
Holly votes no. Carl Sell. Carl Sell.
No.
Carl votes no. Marta Morrissey.
Votes no.
Marta votes no. Steve Levinson.
No.
Steve votes no. Tom Sachs.
Yes.
Tom votes yes. Juliana Sharp.
No.
Juliana votes no. Jonna Gannon.
Jonna votes no.
Jonna votes no. We have 6 in favor, 8 against, with 1 abstention. The motion does not pass. Does anyone else have a motion to make? No other motions? Does anyone have any suggestions on where we go from here?
My suggestion would be to redraft it with recommending a logical or some sort of reasonable consolidation, rather than requiring it or making it impossible to develop without full consolidation.
Okay, so we've rejected the idea of requiring a hard requirement of full consolidation. So we need to consider something less than that. That's what you're saying, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Ed, when
yes.
this is Holly.
Yes, Holly.
When do we need to make a final recommendation on this? What kind of time do we have?
Well, we haven't discussed that yet. This was supposed to be the last meeting. Obviously, we're going to need another meeting before we talk about when. I think we should try to stay focused on what it is we're looking for. And then we can move to talking about timing.
I wanted to clarify staff's feedback to Ann's questions. If we look at changing the language, can we only make the changes in the second option area? Can we not make the other changes that are needed to make the document consistent or not contradict itself?
I invite Clara or anyone else to chime in on that, but my understanding is we've only been authorized to deal with this particular section, but perhaps I'm wrong about that.
I think I go ahead and send those changes that are outside of land unit D. And I understand it's to make it consistent or remove any internal inconsistencies. Send them to David and we'll look at them. And I think what we can do is we can convey them and we can try to get a determination on whether we think we can change it within the current scope. I mean, it's worth asking.
Right, because
if not, we can offer them as part of the task force recommendation. And if it's something that the planning commissioner or staff, you know, it's something the board supervisor Lusk can authorize as either future cleanup or change the authorized plan amendment to include it. I mean, but I think we should document it. So go ahead and send them to David and we can at least start by answering the question, is it within the current scope?
Okay, thank you.
Well, perhaps, go ahead.
No, I'm just sympathetic because
please go ahead.
I'm hearing lots of sighs and I know it's getting late. So we had this motion about full consolidation. Is there, I thought there was a second motion. Is there currently a motion on the table? Is that?
There is not, no. Well, there was a discussion of an idea. I don't think it was posed as a motion.
There are kind of three scenarios. The other one is to include this paragraph and break it up kind of parcel 12 and everything else. I guess I'd be interested in whether that's an idea the task force supports. And then the third idea, the newer idea was logical parcel consolidation, which was the other suggestion. So if there's a way to narrow that down so that we know what our target is for writing this.
Ed?
Yes.
Carl, I like this language overall. I think the staff has done a good job. The things that I like. I have problems putting any more traffic on South Van Dorn Street, and I'd like to see something in there that would encourage the bridge from Oakwood to Vine and on to the metro station, and that isn't rock solid with this. If we could get that in there, I think we'd be in good shape.
So you want to see added language to recommend both the Oakwood Vine Bridge and the pedestrian connection to the metro from Vine Street. Okay.
That might make sense because with the conversation, we talked about the fact that the objective of the bridge was not only to get vehicle traffic from Vine to Oakwood, but to get pedestrian and bicycle traffic from Oakwood over to the metro. So even though the development itself might not need the language, it probably should be included because the plan in general, the comprehensive plan, not just the piece we focused on tonight, but it does stipulate that one of the objectives of development in the TSA is to provide non-automotive transportation from Oakwood to the metro station.
Yeah.
So it might be, we might want to include the bridge and consideration of the bridge in support of that part of the plan, which, and it does talk about the transportation issue, and one of the objectives is to have ways for people to get to the metro without driving. So this might, as a pedestrian, might be a good idea.
That's honestly the only way this is really a TSA in the first place. But
well, that's a different issue.
That is a different issue.
That's how it was defined, and that's what we're stuck with.
Yes. Okay. So,
Can Lynn reread her suggested change related to consolidation? Because maybe that's a way to move forward.
Okay. Lynn, you want to take that away? You could put that up on the screen again if you like.
Okay. If Steve will let me share, I'm happy to do that. Uh-oh. Give me a minute. Is it there?
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
I'm sorry. It's always a challenge for me sometimes. I had, regarding the consolidation issue, I had just suggested in the first paragraph, instead of full consolidation, to say logical parcel consolidation, and picking up that same language in the very last paragraph.
Mr. Chairman, we just voted on that.
Well, we didn't vote on that language. We voted on whether or not to basically require full consolidation. We did not require that.
That's correct. But now you want to back off full consolidation? I don't want to do that.
I would ask, what is, whose logic? What, logical parcel consolidation? Who's in charge of the logic?
The land use committee?
I was gonna say, I'll answer that question since I wrote the language, but I mean, that is often, and Clara can comment, I think that often we find that in the plan, and it's really something that staff looks at when you're proposing a rezoning. You know, staff looks at things like, is it large enough to address things like buffering and screening, stormwater management, all of those things that you would have to address, you know, on the parcels that you've been able to consolidate.
It's both that and thinking about any remaining parcels, and are they large enough to also implement the plan? And again, as I said earlier, what it doesn't do is directly address how you know, that screening would be the language to address new residential uses with the existing industrial uses. So that would still be a consideration keep that language about screening between new residential and existing commercial uses.
Would it be too much to ask of staff to present us with maybe, I don't know, if perhaps 3 options? One would be perhaps this logical parcel consolidation, as Lynn is suggesting, and maybe a couple of other options for maybe other ways to consolidate, other levels of consolidation, I suppose is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had kind of 2 levels in the text we had, and so we can break them out so that they're distinct sets of text. So no, it's not too, for you, task force, it's not too much. Task staff to do that.
I mean, does anyone else, does that seem like a logical idea to move forward? Does anybody agree with that idea, disagree with that idea?
If you're going to ask staff to do something, I'd like for them in Unit D to talk more about participation in the bridge, the pedestrian and vehicular bridge.
Right.
Vine Street and on pedestrian to the metro station. It's going to do nothing the way it's written now, and I think they should participate.
Good idea, Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we took note of that discussion, and so we can look at that bullet about the bridge and think about whether we can, well, based on the discussion, how we can be more specific about what it means to demonstrate, whether it means money for design, does it mean money for construction? How might we phrase that so that the task force can consider that?
So do we leave that as our ending point here tonight? Does anyone have a different suggestion for how we should leave things? When I say ending point, we still have to discuss when the next meeting would be, but yes, Carl. I'm listening, Carl.
The Board of Supervisors, they set up a separate financial area to fund the bridge from Oakwood to Vine, and have those.
I heard ask the Board of Super. I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out. I heard something about ask the Board of Supervisors to set up something to fund the bridge. Beyond that, I didn't get it. Do you want to type it into the chat, perhaps?
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so let's talk about when we can meet again.
Set up a tax district to fund.
Set up a tax district.
Tax.
Carl is suggesting that we recommend that the Board of Supervisors set up a tax district to fund the bridge. Did I get that right, Carl?
This is Jonna. Who would be the tax district? I mean, tax districts usually have a defined, because we can't go into Alexandria City and we're butting up against
That's it. Let's make Alexandria pay for it. That's a great idea.
I like that. But, you know, as far as Fairfax County's
maybe
ability
with the meals tax. Yeah.
to do that for a Fairfax County area, and it's not that
right.
big.
Write it down.
So, all right. So how much time will staff need to draft what they're going to draft before we return?
I mean, it should be at least 2 to 3 weeks so that we can get it reviewed internally. I mean, I think we could draft something, but if we can get it reviewed internally, there's more likelihood that
Would May 23rd work as a date to meet again? That's the Monday before Memorial Day. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks from today.
And I will not be there if we do the 23rd. I'll be on a cruise.
Do you own the cruise line by this point, Tom? Okay. All right. The 16th would be a possibility. That's 3 weeks out.
No. I can't do the 16th.
Can we only meet on Monday nights?
Well, we only have met on Monday nights. That's our tradition. I suppose it doesn't have to be set in stone if everyone's agreeable to meet on a different night. So
when do you go on your cruise, Tom?
We leave the 22nd.
Would
Thursday the 19th.
We're looking
That's
at the
what I
week
was
of the
thinking of.
16th, maybe?
Yeah, Thursday, May 19th.
Works for me.
Works for me.
No objections to May 19th?
I'm not able to make that. I'm sorry.
This is
that
Jeff.
clarity?
I can't be there on the 19th. That's the board meeting for Island Creek.
But the 17th or 18th,
Okay, does the 17th or the 18th work for people?
Yeah, this is Tom. I can't do the 17th. I could do the 18th.
Does anyone at all object to May 18th? Going once. Going twice. Sold to the SSPA task force. One more meeting on May 18th. That's our date.
Maybe a Wednesday will be lucky for us.
Yeah, maybe. Let's hope so. All right. So we're going to meet on May 18th. Staff will write up an option as suggested by Lynn and perhaps a couple of other options at other levels of consolidation and distribute it ahead of time, and hopefully we can come to some conclusion. And with that, unless anyone else has anything else, I think we've concluded our business for the evening.
Ed, there's a comment, I don't know that it matters to us, but there's a comment in the chat from Ann about the 18th is a meeting on the south side 495 lanes.
They've got, yeah, the
I mean, I
Virginia
think there's a
Department
meeting
of
every night, so
Transportation sent out.
I think we just need
Yeah,
to not worry about it.
Yeah, I'm afraid I agree. It was hard enough to come up with that date in the first place. There's probably no night that there isn't some conflict or other, but the people who have put so much time and effort into this, I think we need to make sure they can attend.
Yeah, the
So
meeting
the
on the
18th
18th.
works.
The meeting on the 18th is for the VDOT South Side Express Lane study. And that's the only virtual meeting that they have. The rest of them look like they're in-person meetings. One of
But
which
their
is
information is usually available on the website, and you can always do a written comment on it.
Yeah, but it's getting it getting it from the website is not the same as attending. You know, it's like listening to these meetings after the fact. If you can't attend, it's not the same as participating because you don't get a chance to ask a question or make a comment.
But they always take written comments.
Yep.
So it's not the same, but you're correct. It's not the same, but I think we have to stick with May 18th for our meeting. I don't.
Yeah,
you know.
I just
Yes.
want to say also, presumably the communities that are affected that would be really interested in going to meetings.
I'm sorry, Dan. You're kind of garbled. I can't quite make sense of what you're saying.
People can do double duty, so someone else from that community can attend the meeting on the 18th. So I think the 18th is a great date.
Okay, well, this has been a long slog, and thank you to all our members. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to Lynn and Laurie and everybody who participated. This has not been easy, but we're trying to work through it. We'll see you all on May 18th.
And Ed, I just wanted to follow up with something we spoke about last week.
Yes, I forgot. There was actually a few other items on the agenda. I wasn't even thinking of that.
Yeah, at the end of 2021, task force members were invited to share their thoughts on the site-specific plan amendment process by participating in a retrospective survey that was also open to the general public. So we just wanted to provide a brief update on where the county is in evaluating those potential changes to the program. And results for the community survey can be, I'll try to share my screen real quick, but so you can see the website. Just a second. Let's see. I'm sorry. I can't find where to share my screen, but well, anyway, results from the survey can be found on the track of SSPA plan amendment webpage, and then within the next few days, the Department of I think it's hopefully tomorrow the department will be publishing a draft summary of information from the public, and also summarizing information gathered from members of two subcommittees to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And that white paper will kind of catch everyone up on some of the ideas for potential changes that have been discussed up to this point. And also the names of all the appointed task force members from each of the districts that received SSPA nominations during the South County and North County cycles will be included on a distribution list for invitation to a series of 4 SSPA process open houses that are currently planned for early May. And the currently anticipated dates are Saturday, May 7th at 9 a.m. for the first open house. Then the second one is planned for Wednesday, May 11th at 12 p.m. or noon. And there's another one on Wednesday, the evening of Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m. that's planned. And then the final one is currently planned for Thursday, May 12th at 9 a.m. So the list of all the task force members for the lead district is included in the list that'll be sent information for final information for when the open houses are scheduled. And again, if you continue to monitor the track of plan amendment webpage over the next few days, you'll find that summary report, white paper that'll be published soon. So I just wanted to give everyone an update on that, on how to find more information on some of the potential changes to this process, and also let everyone know how you can stay involved with the discussion at those open houses in early May. And that was it for staff.
Thank you, Steve and David and everyone else who helped out here tonight. I'm sure we all appreciate it. All right.
Thank you,
See you
Ed.
on May
It's not an
18th.
easy job
Good
you're
night,
doing.
everybody.
Thank you, Ed. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.